The daily struggle. The hospital corridor gleamed under fluorescent lights as Natalie Rivers pushed her cleaning cart forward, her shoulders aching from the previous night's double shift at Rosie's diner. 6 hours down, 2 to go before picking up Ethan from after-school care. The mental calculation of remaining bill payments ran through her mind. Rent due in 3 days, electricity the following week, and somehow she needed to find $200 for Ethan's science camp deposit. "You missed a spot," muttered her supervisor, pointing to a barely visible smudge on the otherwise immaculate floor. Natalie nodded without argument. After 3 years at Memorial Hospital, she'd learned which battles were worth fighting. This wasn't one of them. "Mom, look what I made." 8-year-old Ethan's face beamed hours later as he held up a small robot constructed from recycled materials. His dark curls bounced with excitement so similar to his father's, the man who'd walked out when presented with the news of impending fatherhood. "That's amazing. Buddy." Natalie's fatigue momentarily vanished as she admired her son's creation. "How does it work?" While Ethan explained the mechanics with enthusiasm beyond his years, Natalie unlocked their modest one-bedroom apartment. The space was small but meticulously organized, Ethan's bed in the bedroom while she slept on the pull-out sofa. It wasn't ideal, but she'd created a home from determination and love. "Can we have spaghetti tonight?" Ethan asked, already setting the table, their nightly routine perfectly choreographed. "You read my mind." Natalie smiled, ignoring the throbbing in her feet as she filled a pot with water. The next morning arrived too quickly. Natalie's alarm blared at 5 a.m., leaving just enough time to prepare Ethan's lunch before waking him. As she hurried through the hospital entrance for her early shift, she collided with a solid wall of expensive suit and cologne. "I'm so sorry," she gasped, horrified as coffee splashed across what was clearly a custom-tailored jacket. "Don't worry about it," the deep voice belonged to a tall man with intense gray eyes and a strong jawline softened by unexpected laugh lines. "I can pay for the cleaning," Natalie offered automatically, though the offer would demolish her carefully balanced budget. The man's expression shifted from surprise to something unreadable. "Absolutely not necessary." He studied her face for a moment too long. "I'm Jackson. Jackson Blackwood." The name registered immediately. Everyone at Memorial knew of the reclusive tech billionaire who donated the new pediatric wing. His face occasionally appeared in the papers, always serious, always distant, yet the man before her was smiling, extending his hand as though they were equals meeting at a social event rather than a harried custodian who'd just ruined his likely $1,000 suit. "Natalie," she replied, shaking his hand briefly before hurrying away, unaware that this accidental meeting had already set extraordinary events in motion. Unexpected encounters. 3 days after their collision, Natalie spotted Jackson Blackwood speaking with hospital administrators outside the pediatric wing. She quickly ducked into a supply closet, waiting until the group passed. When she emerged, she found him leaning against the wall as if expecting her. "Hiding from me?" His smile carried no judgment, only amusement. "Just doing my job, Mr. Blackwood." Natalie focused on organizing her cleaning supplies. "Jackson, please." He stepped closer. "I actually came looking for you." Natalie's defenses immediately rose. Men like him didn't look for women like her without ulterior motives. "Is there a problem with the cleaning service?" "No," he chuckled. "I wanted to replace that coffee I lost. There's a decent cafe downstairs." "That's not necessary," she checked her watch. "And I'm on the clock." Jackson nodded, accepting her boundary without pushback. "Another time, perhaps." He turned to leave but paused. "By the way, I noticed your badge says you've worked here 3 years. The pediatric wing opened 2 years ago. Did you help with the initial setup?" The unexpected question caught her off guard. "Yes, I was part of the preparation team." "What do you think of it?" "Honestly?" Natalie hesitated before answering truthfully. "The playroom could use more natural light, and the family waiting area needs more comfortable furniture for overnight stays." Interest flickered in Jackson's eyes. "Noted." A week later, renovations began on exactly those areas. The following month brought several similar encounters. Jackson appearing in the hospital cafeteria during her break, crossing paths in the parking lot. Each time his approach was respectful, his conversation genuine. Never once did he mention his wealth or her circumstances. One evening at Rosie's diner, Natalie looked up from refilling coffee to find Jackson seated in her section. reading through documents. Are you following me? She asked bluntly, setting down the coffee pot. Actually, I have an office nearby, he replied, but I won't pretend I'm not pleased to see you. When Ethan's after-school care canceled unexpectedly that night, Natalie had no choice but to bring him to the diner. She settled him in a corner booth with homework. Who's that? Jackson asked, noticing the boy. My son, Ethan. Jackson studied the child with unexpected interest. He looks like he's building something. He loves robotics, Natalie explained, pride momentarily overcoming her reserve. He's trying to create a mechanical arm from scratch. Without asking permission, Jackson walked over and introduced himself to Ethan. To Natalie's surprise, he sat down and began sketching diagrams, explaining concepts in terms her 8-year-old could understand. Ethan's eyes widened with excitement. Mom, Mr. Jackson knows everything about robots, Ethan exclaimed later. He says I have great ideas. That night, watching her son sleep with renewed determination to build his robot, Natalie felt something shift. The wall she'd carefully constructed around her heart had developed a hairline crack, one that both terrified and intrigued her. Meanwhile, across town in his penthouse, Jackson Blackwood stared at his reflection, wondering why a struggling waitress and her brilliant son had become the most interesting people in his otherwise perfect but hollow life. An extraordinary proposition. The eviction notice arrived on a rainy Tuesday, the paper growing damp in Natalie's trembling hands. Her apartment building had been purchased by a development company. Residents had 60 days to vacate. In Portland's brutal housing market, affordable rentals were nearly impossible to find, especially for a single mother with minimal savings. We'll figure it out, she assured Ethan, though panic clawed at her throat. By week's end, she'd viewed 12 apartments. None would accept her application with her income-to-rent ratio. The shelter waiting list was months long. That evening at Rosie's, Jackson noticed her distraction immediately. What's wrong? He asked, abandoning pretense that his regular visits were coincidental. Perhaps it was exhaustion, or perhaps the genuine concern in his eyes, but Natalie found herself confiding her situation. Jackson listened without interruption, then said simply, I have a solution. I can't accept money from you, she replied firmly. That's not what I'm offering. His fingers drummed the table nervously, a gesture so human it startled her. This powerful man was actually nervous. I have a proposal of a different nature. Natalie's coffee cup paused midway to her lips. Proposal? Marry me. The cup clattered against its saucer. Excuse me? It's a practical arrangement, Jackson continued, voice measured despite the wildness of his suggestion. You need security. I need... He paused, seemingly unsure how to articulate what he needed. A charity case? Natalie supplied coldly. A family. The raw honesty in those 2 words silenced her momentarily. I've built an empire, Natalie. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. But my home is empty. My life is empty. He leaned forward. Ethan reminds me of myself at that age. Brilliant, curious. Except he has what I never did. A mother who believes in him. So you want to... What? Buy yourself a ready-made family? Jackson winced. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Natalie whispered, gathering her composure. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I've spent 8 years teaching Ethan that we don't take shortcuts. That dignity matters more than comfort. Is it dignified to become homeless? The blunt question stung. I'll figure something out. I know you will, Jackson acknowledged. You're remarkably capable. But consider what I'm offering. Ethan could attend any school. You could pursue your own dreams instead of working yourself to exhaustion. At what cost? She met his gaze directly. My independence? My self-respect? Jackson's expression softened. I'm not asking for anything you're not willing to give. Separate rooms. Legal protections for both of you. A partnership, not ownership. Why would you do this? Because for the first time in decades I feel something when I'm with you and Ethan. He stood, leaving his business card. Think about it. Not just for yourself, but for your son. That night, watching Ethan sleep on their pull-out sofa, Natalie turned the card over repeatedly in her fingers, torn between the pragmatism that had always guided her life and the principles that defined her character. Hearts in balance. Ethan's collapse came without warning. One moment he was demonstrating his robot to his science teacher. The next he was unconscious on the classroom floor. Atypical cardiac arrhythmia, the pediatric cardiologist explained to Natalie in the emergency room. It's genetic, rare in children his age. We need specialized tests, possibly surgery. Her insurance would cover only a fraction of the costs. Even working triple shifts wouldn't bridge the gap. 3 days later, after nights spent sleeping in a hospital chair, Natalie found Jackson in the waiting room. She hadn't called him. Somehow he simply knew. "What do you need?" he asked without preamble. Pride warred with desperation in her heart. "He needs specialized care. The best cardiologist is in Boston." Jackson nodded once. "Pack a bag. My jet will be ready in an hour." "I haven't agreed to your proposal," she reminded him. "This isn't conditional," he replied firmly. "But my offer still stands." 24 hours later, watching specialists examine her son in one of Boston's finest hospitals, Natalie made her decision. 1 year, she told Jackson in the sterile hallway. "A temporary arrangement until Ethan's healthy and we're stable. Then we reevaluate." "Acceptable terms," he agreed, his businesslike tone betrayed by the relief in his eyes. The marriage ceremony was brief, conducted in the hospital chapel with Ethan as their only witness. The paperwork Jackson had prepared was meticulous, protecting her autonomy, establishing trust for both her and Ethan regardless of the marriage's duration. 2 weeks later, they moved into Jackson's penthouse. Ethan, recovering well after his procedure, marveled at his new bedroom filled with robotics equipment. Natalie felt like an imposter in the elegant space, while Jackson seemed strangely uncertain in his own home. "I work late most nights," he explained awkwardly, showing her to her suite, far from his own. "The staff handles meals, but they can be dismissed if you prefer privacy." Natalie observed him closely. "Have you always been this lonely?" The question visibly startled him. "I'm not lonely. I'm independent." "There's a difference," she said softly. The first month passed in polite distance. The second brought unexpected changes. Jackson began coming home earlier. Natalie started cooking family meals, dismissing the chef. Ethan flourished under Jackson's mentorship, their robotics projects expanding across the living room. One evening, Natalie found Jackson staring at a small photo, a woman holding a young boy. "My mother," he explained, noticing her presence. "She died when I was 9. My father remarried quickly. His new wife had no use for another woman's child." Understanding bloomed within her. His childhood wounds mirrored her adult fears, the terror of depending on someone who might withdraw their care. "Ethan asks if you'll attend his science fair next week," she said, instead of addressing his revelation directly. "I've already cleared my calendar," Jackson replied, his eyes warming. That night, passing in the hallway, their hands brushed accidentally. Neither pulled away immediately. The contact lasted only seconds, yet something fundamental shifted between them. The careful contract of convenience developing invisible amendments neither had anticipated. Choosing love 6 months into their arrangement, photographs appeared in business tabloids. Blackwood's rags to riches bride and Billionaire's charity case. The stories painted Natalie as a calculated gold digger, Ethan as her meal ticket. Jackson's company stock dipped slightly amid speculation about his judgment. "Ignore it," Jackson advised, but Natalie saw how the board members eyed her at corporate functions. This woman who didn't belong in their world. Then came the dinner with Jackson's stepmother, Victoria Blackwood, still elegant and imposing at 70. She observed Natalie throughout the meal with calculating eyes before requesting a private conversation. "You seem sincere enough," Victoria conceded in Jackson's study, "which makes my offer simpler. $5 million tax-free, enough to secure your son's education through graduate school and provide comfortably for you both." Natalie stared in confusion. "In exchange for what?" "A quiet divorce. Return to your previous life. Jackson needs a suitable partner from our circle, not a distraction." "Did Jackson send you to do this?" Natalie asked, heart hammering. Victoria laughed softly. "Darling, he'd be furious if he knew. But I raised that boy after his mother died. I know what's best for him." "You didn't raise him," Natalie corrected quietly. "You tolerated him." Victoria's expression hardened. "Think of your son. This fantasy will end eventually. Take the security while it's offered." That night, Natalie watched Jackson helping Ethan with homework. Their heads bent together in identical concentration. The temporary arrangement had evolved into something neither had anticipated. Jackson no longer worked weekends. She'd started taking online business courses. They'd begun planning a family vacation, something neither had dared suggest was part of their agreement. And somewhere between Ethan's recovery and domestic routine, something else had developed. Something Natalie had protected herself against but failed to prevent. Victoria offered me $5 million to leave you, she said when Ethan was asleep. Jackson froze. And? The practical choice is obvious. Her voice remained steady despite her racing heart. Financial security for Ethan, protection from public scrutiny. I understand. His expression shuddered, the vulnerability she'd gradually uncovered disappearing. He turned away. I'll have papers drawn. I'm not leaving. Natalie stepped forward, hands trembling. The practical choice isn't always the right one. Jackson faced her, confusion evident. You deserve better than gossip and judgment, and you deserve someone who chooses you. She moved closer. Not your money or security, just you. Our agreement was temporary, he reminded her, hope and hesitation warring in his expression. I'm renegotiating. Natalie smiled, tears threatening. I'm thinking something more permanent. If you want the same. Jackson's carefully constructed walls collapsed completely as he closed the distance between them. His kiss wasn't practiced or perfect. It was honest, vulnerable. Everything their beginning hadn't been but their future might be. I want a real marriage, he whispered against her hair. A real family, the three of us. Natalie nodded, finally understanding that true security wasn't found in independence or wealth, but in choosing to trust another heart with your own.